Hey guys, tonight we're slipping behind the curtain of ancient Egypt's most gilded prison, the royal palace. But we're not following the Pharaoh. Nope. You, tonight, are his wife. Not his only wife. Mind you, just the one legally required to smile the most. The heat is already unbearable when your veil is lifted. You're 13, maybe 12. The age doesn't matter so much to your handlers, but your womb, oh, that's top priority. You've been fed honeyed dates for weeks to plump your cheeks. Your skin's been scrubbed daily with salt and milk, and the priestesses have burned incense to Hathor non-stop to make sure you smell appropriately divine. It's your wedding day, and nobody asked what you wanted. You don't love this man. How could you? He's your half-brother, or cousin, or maybe even your uncle. Nobody really tracks these things beyond royal enough. What matters is blood. The Nile isn't the only thing that needs to stay pure in this kingdom. The ceremony is less romantic, more ritualistic. There's no kiss at the altar, but there's plenty of chanting. You walk through columns painted with gods judging you. You kneel beside a man twice your age, maybe 3 times. He's been married before. He'll marry again, but you are the great royal wife now. Technically, you'll be reminded of that word, technically, lot. And here's the funny thing. From the outside, your new life looks incredible. You live in a palace of polished limestone. Your feet never touch sand again unless you want them to. And you're now the second most important person in all of Egypt, except ... You are unsingle quotes. Your first morning as queen starts with a lecture from a eunuch about your schedule, lessons in court protocol, flower arranging for offerings, rituals you'll have to memorize by next moonrise. The second morning, you're bleeding, your body adjusting, maybe from stress, maybe from the sharp shift in diet. Nobody lets you rest. There's a breakfast ceremony to attend. You sit beside your husband while priests chant hymns to Mat, the goddess of balance, and you try to balance your face into something resembling joy. He talks to generals. You smile at papyrus. The food smells wonderful, but you eat little royal wives. Don't burp at ceremonies, ever. Sometimes you sneak glimpses at the palace gardens from behind gauzy linen blinds. Peacocks wander the walkways. A crocodile basks in a royal pond, sacred and lazy, surrounded by ducks who don't know they're decorative. It's all beautiful, curated, manicured, peaceful, but you already feel the walls closing in. You miss your mother, though she visits rarely now. You miss real air. The palace is scented with frankincense and lotus water, but it never smells like outside. At 13, you already understand something adult. Everything you are now belongs to someone else. Your clothes, your body, your expression, your future. You're technically queen. But queen is more job description than power role. You're expected to support your husband, bear his heir, and be photogenic for temple murals. You're also expected to endure. Quietly now and then, you wonder what would happen if you ran, walked out barefoot through the gate, climbed down the terraced garden walls, and disappeared into the market in plain linen. Spoiler, you wouldn't last an hour. You're too pale now, too smooth, too obviously royal. And even if you made it past the guards, you're a symbol now. You can't hide. The people would board drag you back at night. Your chambers echo with flute music and footsteps. Someone is always near. A handmaiden, a bodyguard, a eunuch. You've never been more alone. And yet you're never by yourself. You curl into imported cotton sheets that feel like clouds and stare at the painted ceiling. Stars, suns, scar, the ceiling promises eternity, but you're still only 13. Historians still argue whether these young royal wives ever understood the political weight they carried, whether they were indoctrinated or simply swept along by momentum. Either way, you learn fast. Your signature becomes law. Your fertility becomes prophecy. Your dreams, well, no one really cares. And so, you practice your smile. You learn to walk without looking clumsy in beaded sandals. You memorize the correct way to bow to each god, to nod to each guest, to eat pomegranate seeds delicately even when they stain your fingers. You stop thinking about what you like. It's safer that way, because this palace, beautiful as it is, doesn't want your opinions. It wants your legacy. And tonight, it just wants you to look radiant for the fertility moon. Asterisk. The sun hasn't even climbed over the horizon when you're summoned by your nursemaid again. Your hair's still tangled with sleep, and your legs ache from yesterday's fertility procession. But that doesn't matter. The temple calendar is more powerful than your body clock. You sit motionless on a low stool while 2 servants rub oil into your skin. Not just any oil, this one's infused with frankincense, blue lotus, and something they won't name. It's meant to encourage conception. They say it as if your womb is a stubborn clay pot needing softening. Outside, birds screech by the river. You're not allowed to go there, of course. Not unsupervised. But every now and then, you hear laughter children playing in the shallows. Market women slapping fish onto baskets. It sounds more real than anything in your chambers. Your marriage is nearly a year old. You're 13 going on 14, and while the priestesses whisper congratulations, your handmaidens are starting to whisper something else. Why no heir yet? See, being the wife of a pharaoh isn't just about keeping him company at rituals, or looking exquisite in lapis lazuli. It's about the continuation of the divine bloodline. And right now, your womb is suspiciously quiet. You've already drunk every herbal tonic they've brought. Some made from date pits, some from crushed beetles, one that tasted suspiciously like tree bark and mint. One tonic made you vomit. For 2 days, that means it's working, they said cheerfully. You haven't trusted the tea since. Your meals are now closely monitored. No more onions to cooling, they claim. More honey, more warm goat's milk. Your baths are ritual now too, not for pleasure. Bathed in sacred water, blessed by a priest of Isis. A new amulet hangs around your neck, nestled between your collarbones, solid gold, heavy, shaped like a fertility goddess with very optimistic hips. In theory, you could just ... not drink the tea, not lie with the pharaoh on auspicious nights, not smile through the ceremonies and prayers. But not isn't an option for someone like you. The court astrologers have already charted your stars. You're told your destiny aligns with fertility, prosperity, and divine favor. No pressure, obviously. And so, the palace becomes a gallery of silent expectation. Every chamber you enter, eyes follow your belly. Subtle glances from servants. Curious head tilts from visiting priests. Even your husband's other wives notice. One offered you a cake last week, widely friendly. You didn't eat it. This is where your body becomes less yours and more Egypt's. A national relic, a sacred vessel, a state project with legs. You start to feel it too. That awful shift from maybe I'll become a mother to what if I never do. The what-ifs pile up like linen laundry. And nobody talks about the women who don't conceive where they go, what they're given or taken from. There are rumors of remote estates, of being graciously retired, of being turned into high-ranking nuns for the goddess Hathor. But you never meet these women. They vanish, so you pray. Not just at temple. You start whispering little offerings. At night, 2 statues in your room. To the ceiling, to your own reflection. Historians still argue whether these royal fertility rites were spiritually fulfilling or little more than state-sanctioned pressure cookers. Either way, it's hard to focus on prayer when someone's checking your pulse while you pee. Your husband isn't unkind, but he's also not present. He comes to you when the court astrologer suggests it's time. He recites his part of the fertility prayer. He touches you like a ritual, not like a partner. Then he leaves before the oil on your skin dries. You lie there, cold and cramping, counting the tiles in the ceiling again. 1, 2, 3. It's always 60-4. Your attendants wait outside the chamber door, ready with warm cloths and cinnamon cakes. You used to eat the cakes. Now they make your stomach turn. You feel different, not sick, but strange. Your chest aches, your breath feels tight. A priestess suggests a special sand bath, infused with milk and river herbs. You sit in the tub, steaming while flies circle overhead. The heat stings. Still, you hope, but the blood comes anyway. Right on schedule. A tiny red betrayal on the ceremonial linen. And once again, the palace exhales, disappointed but polite about it. Another month begins. Another calendar entry marked with incense and obligation. Still no air dot, still no swelling belly, still no escape, sometimes. At night, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the polished bronze mirror beside your bed. You stare, search for signs your cheeks fuller, eyes brighter. Anything that could be interpreted as divine. Pregnancy glow. You look the same, except more tired. And every time you smile at a priest or tilt your head at a royal banquet, you wonder if they can tell, if they know you're failing, if they're already preparing the next wife in line, just in case. Because in this palace, a womb isn't sacred because it belongs to you. It's sacred only if it performs. It's strange how silence can feel so loud inside a palace. The walls are always whispering. Stone doesn't have a voice, but the people walking between them do. And lately, you've noticed the whispers have changed. Not about you directly, no. One dares, but you can feel the tension twisting beneath every your radiance and every tight smile from your ladies-in-waiting. The kind of silence that starts when people are deciding whether to feel pity or distance. And you're not sure which is worse. You'd think palace life would distract you, and for a while it does. There are mosaics to admire, perfumes to sample, cats to feed. They really are sacred here, and yours wears a tiny collar of ivory beads. She has more personal freedom than you do. Her name is Nefru, which means beauty. She doesn't know how lucky she is. But under the silken ceremony, you start to realize something. Your beautiful prison is also a pressure cooker. Everything is about appearances. The tapestries must hang perfectly. The sacred incense must be burned clockwise, never counterclockwise. And you must glide, not walk, nod, not speak. Be pleasing, never loud. Laugh only when appropriate, never when amused. Even your meals are rehearsed. Today's breakfast comes on gold trays, pomegranate seeds, barley cakes, a tiny jug of sycamore fig syrup. It looks beautiful. You take small bites, slowly, under the gaze of your chamber's steward. He records everything you eat. For health records, they say. You suspect it's more about fertility tracking. And then there's the chair, the gilded, bejeweled thing that you have to sit in during state functions. The throne's too wide for your frame, the cushion lumpy. But you must perch there like a falcon on a branch, calm and aloof, even when your legs fall asleep, even when your back aches from the corset-like linen wrappings they've tightened across your torso. Again, you are no longer a girl. You are posture and poise and performance, and yet, somehow, you're still invisible. You're not allowed to leave the palace complex without an entourage. You're not allowed to bathe alone. You're not allowed to write letters that aren't reviewed by a royal scribe. The one time you tried to send a message to your cousin, just asking if she was well, you were told gently but firmly that the great wife doesn't write casually. Historians still argue whether these restrictions were meant to protect royal women or isolate them. Protection sounds better on papyrus, but you know what it feels like. Velvet-trapped loneliness. Still, you try. You ask your steward for more. Time in the gardens? He agrees. As long as a priestess walks 5 paces behind you, you ask for music. The palace flutists perform for you 3 times a week now. Their songs are soft and melancholy sleepy lullabies meant for infants. But you hum along anyway. And sometimes you dream. You imagine what it might be like to be a merchant's wife, dusty feet, sun-baked cheeks, freedom. To eat what you wanted, to marry someone you chose, to walk barefoot into the Nile. But instead, you sit on marble floors, legs folded just so, while 2 priestesses anoint your arms with sacred myrrh. It's sticky. They say it pleases, Hathor. Today, you're required to attend a ritual, not a grand one, a small domestic ceremony in the Hall of Offerings. There's a visiting dignitary from Kush, and your presence is part of the political choreography. You wear a tunic that weighs more than a toddler, layered with beads and metal thread. It glitters when you breathe. You don't recognize the Kushite envoy, but he looks at you like you're a golden statue, respectful, distant, like he knows you don't really speak, only shimmer. You smile. He nods. The ritual continues. Afterward, you're led back to your private rooms, where a platter of fresh figs awaits. You sit on the edge of your bed, legs swinging like you used to do as a child, and stare at them. They're warm from the sun, probably delicious, but you're not hungry. You don't know if you're ever hungry anymore. You eat because they tell you to, sleep when the astrologers suggest it, bathe when the moon reaches a certain angle, and then, as if summoned by the weight of your own thoughts, your handmaiden whispers, "The concubines are rehearsing for the spring festival." You stiffen. The concubines, the polite term for the other women less decorated, technically lower in rank, but sometimes just as favored. They sing, dance, sometimes even debate poetry with the Pharaoh. One of them is rumored to be pregnant. This is where things get tricky. You can't show jealousy. That would be undignified. You can't ignore it, either. That would be weak. So, you practice what you've become best at, pretending. You smile, you rise. You ask if the concubines will be wearing the green linen or the gold. The answer is green, your least favorite color. But you nod gracefully. Your cat jumps into your lap, purring. She doesn't care about politics. Just warm laps. You envy her. They call it the House of Women. But don't let the name fool you. It's not a spa retreat or sisterhood sanctuary. It's the royal harem, a small city within the palace, with its own guards, gardens, servants, politics, and predators. You live here now, technically. Not alone, of course. You're the great wife, the first among equals. But equals still bite. The harem is a glittering maze of soft cushions and sharper alliances. The other wives smile too widely, compliment you too smoothly. Their coal-lined eyes flick to your stomach when they think you aren't looking. You've learned to meet their gaze and sip your pomegranate juice slowly. It's a game. One, you're expected to play well. There are over a dozen wives here. Some older, some barely out of girlhood. Many are foreign princesses, shipped in like luxury goods to seal treaties. They don't speak your language well yet, but they know how to curtsy. One of them arrived last week with a ruby-studded necklace and a silent bodyguard who follows her like a shadow. She hasn't smiled once. You've stopped trying to befriend. The others, it's safer not to. Last time you got close to someone, she vanished. Taken back to her home province for rest, they said. No one believes that. There's a ranking system, of course. Not official, but deeply understood. Who gets seated closer to the Pharaoh at feasts? Who receives the better perfumes? Who gets the finest silks? It's less a ladder, more a chessboard, and you're expected to be queen and pawn at once. Your rank depends on many things: lineage, beauty, obedience, ... And whether or not you've borne a son, and you, still waiting, you know some of the concubines talk. You heard one call you the fig that won't ripen, poetic and cruel. One concubine, a stunning girl from Nubia with eyes like carved obsidian, walks too close to the Pharaoh at the last banquet. She bends to refill his wine, and her hand lingers just slightly on his wrist. A blink too long, the kind of moment you're supposed to ignore but absolutely log for later. Afterward, your ladies-in-waiting talk about it like jackals circling. Did you see her dress, so bold, and in front of the priests? You say nothing. You just pluck a date from your tray and chew slowly. Historians still argue whether royal harems were truly dens of backstabbing, or if such stories are just echoes of later court gossip. But when you live inside one, it doesn't really matter. What matters is survival, and survival here is a silent art. Some days, you watch them, the other women, like a priest might study entrails. You note which ones speak too loudly, laugh too easily, cry too often. These are weaknesses. They attract attention in the worst way. Then there are the silent ones. The ones like you. You find yourself rehearsing your expressions in the mirror now. Polite interest, gentle mirth, maternal softness. You must radiate serenity, even when you're boiling inside. You must not react, because if you do, you lose. One of the older wives has developed a habit of placing her hand on your shoulder during ceremonies. It looks supportive, affectionate, but each time she does it, the gesture draws attention to your flat belly, subtle, nasty. You begin to carry a small blue lotus with you, symbol of rebirth, fertility, divine favor. It gives people something else to focus on. You hold it just beneath your chin, letting it tremble slightly as you breathe, just enough to suggest something delicate is happening inside you. It's performance. But so is everything here. Your cat follows you through the corridors. She's not supposed to, but no one has the heart to stop her. You once joked to your handmaid that Nefru is the only loyal creature in the palace. The handmaid didn't laugh. She's been distant lately, probably worried about being accused of sabotage if you fail to conceive. There's a knock at your chamber screen. A priestess enters, flanked by two servants. She bows and says sweetly, The astrologers have determined the window is favorable, which is code for it's time to lie with the Pharaoh again. You nod, smile. You're good at that now. Later that night, you return to your chambers, sore and silent. You sink into your cushions and stare at the painted ceiling. Stars, again, always stars. The concubines are quiet tonight, but you know they're listening. As you are, everyone listens here. For signs, for secrets, for sounds in the night that might shift the balance of power. You've learned not to speak unless necessary. Words are currency, and in the harem, inflation is brutal. Even your dreams are political now. The palace may be made of limestone and gold, but everything rots eventually. Even paradise, even queens. You wake to a sour smell this morning's sweet perfumes, trying to smother something fouler. One of the servant girls has fallen ill. They whisper bad fish or summer fever, but everyone knows what it really is. Something's moving through the house of women, something quiet but persistent. The last time it came, a scribe dropped dead in the garden. Before that, a cupbearer stopped breathing during a banquet. You're not sick yet, but the tension clings to your skin like humidity. There's a healer stationed outside the women's quarters now, and every dish you're served is tested by a food taster. The girl who used to sample your honey cakes has gone pale. You try not to meet her eyes. They tell you the gods are testing the purity of the household, that if everyone behaves with proper devotion, the sickness will pass. You want to believe that, but your cough says otherwise. Still, no one dares disrupt the rituals. Not even for illness. You're still required to attend the procession of Hathor at twilight. You still kneel in the chapel and breathe incense until your eyes sting. You still bathe in milk and rose water, even though your stomach cramps from the smell. The other wives have started wearing amulets shaped like Cobra's wadjet, the protective goddess. You already wear 3 protective charms, one for fertility, one for dreams, one for divine patience. You add a 4th, can't hurt. Historians still argue whether these plagues were natural or the result of palace poisoning. Some believe a rival priesthood used herbs and powders to thin the ranks among favored wives. Others say it was simple bad sanitation. No one agrees. All you know is that it stinks, and it kills. The priestesses say that illness purifies the soul, that sweating through fever and shaking in the dark is a form of divine discipline. You'd prefer less discipline, frankly, but queens don't complain. You've started sleeping on the floor, convinced the air is cooler lower down. Nefru curls beside you, tail twitching. She's healthy, at least. For now, in this dim little corner of the palace, you begin to understand how power doesn't feel like strength. It feels like fear wearing jewelry. It feels like pretending your hand isn't trembling when you lift your goblet. It feels like forcing yourself to stand straight while your vision flickers black at the edges. And the Pharaoh, he doesn't visit. During outbreaks, too risky, you receive his messages on folded papyrus. Rest well, my lotus. The gods favor your strength. Continue your prayers. You'd rather have a doctor. Your ladies in waiting are careful not to show worry, but their silence is louder than words. They wipe your brow with linen soaked in river mint. They massage your feet and mutter incantations, but their eyes are measuring you. What happens if the great wife collapses? Who steps in next? The younger concubines are getting bolder. One of them wore a feathered headdress last week that should have been reserved for someone higher in rank. You said nothing. You watched, waiting to see who noticed. Someone always does. The worst of the fever passes, but your appetite never returns. You sip barley broth and pretend it's filling. You learn to fake energy with posture. You keep your movements fluid, your voice calm, a statue brought to life, gliding past carved pillars and always, always smiling. You still haven't conceived, but a concubine has. The announcement comes during a full moon festival. Trumpets, dancers, offerings. The girl, barely 16, glows with sacred attention. The priests say she's been blessed by Amen himself. They sing songs about lineage and stars aligning. You are required to clap, and you do, that night. Alone in your chamber, you cry for the first time in months. Not because you're jealous, but because for a moment you feel invisible, replaced, forgotten by gods and men alike. Nefru curls beside you, purring. You bury your fingers in her fur and try to breathe slowly. Tomorrow you'll smile again. You'll offer a golden rattle to the expectant mother. You'll suggest incense for her nausea. You'll play the gracious queen. Because in this palace, grief must be graceful, pain must be polite, and power must never show its cracks. Mourning begins with bells, not the soft kind either. These are temple bells, deep, resonant things that ripple across the palace like thunder through linen. A priest is dead. One of the older ones, supposedly. Beloved by the gods, he slipped in the bathhouse, cracked his head on the stone, or so they say. You've lived here long enough to know that deaths like this are never just deaths. They are omens, portents, convenient accidents. So now, the entire palace shifts mood, like reeds bending in wind. Incense smoke is heavier, prayers are louder. And most importantly, for youth the rituals intensify. You're summoned early to the purification chamber, where 3 priestesses are waiting with new robes. White linen, perfumed with cedar and myrrh, symbolic of rebirth, which is ironic, considering you're beginning to feel more like a ghost than a wife. They wash your hands 5 times, your forehead 3, each motion accompanied by whispered chants. You can't quite decipher. You recognize only fragments: body of Isis, breath of Hathor, womb of the 2 lands. You're not sure if you're being blessed or repurposed. Your cat, Nefru, watches from the corner, tail swishing in disapproval. After the ceremony, you're taken not to your quarters, but to the temple of Mut. This is rare. You've only been summoned there twice, before both times for fertility invocations. The temple is cooler than the palace, shaded by stone colonnades that rise like ribs around the sacred chamber. Birds roost near the ceiling. One chirps exactly 3 times, then stops. It feels rehearsed inside. The priestesses smear your eyelids with green malachite, mark your wrists with ochre, and place a small ivory figurine in your hands. It's a woman giving birth, mid-squat, eyes wide in ecstasy or agony. Hard to tell. They tell you to pray. You do. You pray not for a child, exactly, but for something to change, because the air is beginning to feel stale. Not just physically, but spiritually. The same rooms, the same expectations, the same bland reassurances. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian women truly believed in these rituals, or simply endured them out of obligation. Some say it brought comfort, others believe it was pure performance. You're not sure where you land. All you know is you're tired. You're tired of counting days, tired of reading signs in your dreams, tired of checking linens for blood, tired of being a divine vessel without a divine result. That night, after the temple rites, Your husband visits, unannounced. This is unusual. He enters your chambers quietly, dressed not in royal regalia, but a simple linen tunic. You almost don't recognize him. Without the crown, he looks less like a god and more like a man. Tired, like you, he doesn't speak much. He doesn't ask about your health or the temple or your endless cycle of baths and prayers. He simply sits beside you on the cushion-strewn floor, takes a fig from your tray and chews. You watch him. There's a moment brief, fragile, where you think maybe he sees you. Not the roll, not the womb. You dut, and he clears his throat and mentions the concubine again, the pregnant one. She's been moved to the southern wing, he says. More privacy, more space. You nod. You do not ask why he is telling you. This dot, he stands. The gods choose their timing, he says softly, as if it's comfort. You smile. Because that's what you're supposed to do. After he leaves, you sit in silence for hours, until the moonlight slides across the floor in long silver bars. Then you whisper to no one in particular, "What if the gods are tired too?" The next morning, you're informed you'll be participating in a public ceremony during the flood season festival. Not just attending, leading. That hasn't happened in years. Not since the last queen bore her second son. It's a show of strength, your steward says. A reminder of your position. It's also a test. They dress you in the old queen's garments embroidered with sacred beetles and papyrus fronds. You look like a walking mural. Every thread a symbol. Every bracelet a prayer as you walk through. The outer temple courtyard, crowds part, priests chant. Musicians play slow, spiraling melodies. You see faces, thousands of them, some devout, some curious, some blank. One little girl waves a lotus at you. She's missing a tooth. You smile genuinely. For once, because in this moment you remember, these people don't know your doubts. They don't see your failure. To them, you are radiant, unbreakable, the Pharaoh's chosen bride, glowing beneath Ra's golden gaze. And for a heartbeat, you believe it, but only for a heartbeat. Then the music fades, and the priest signals the next step, and you are once again the perfect illusion. Your smile begins to ache, not just from the ceremony, though standing motionless in golden sandals for 2 hours will do that, but from the way it has become a mask. You wear it constantly now, like coal or perfume, a permanent part of your costume. One must look blessed to be believed, but belief wears thin in the harem. The concubine's pregnancy is advancing. Her belly rises like the flood waters, round and visible and impossible to ignore. She walks differently, now slower, heavier, more guarded, and yet she holds her chin high. She has what you don't. That changes things, and so the whispers start again, more pointed this time. A few priestesses stop addressing you with their usual flair. A gift you were promised, a cinnamon from the Red Sea, goes missing. You ask politely. You're told it was delayed in transport. Even Nefru hisses at shadows more often now. You've grown suspicious of everyone. Historians still argue whether pharaohs truly favored their great wives above all others, or simply kept them as ceremonial relics once their usefulness waned. Some point to letters and inscriptions that praise queenly wisdom and partnership. Others point to what's not said, the silent erasure. When a concubine's child ascends instead, you try not to think about succession, but then a priest suggests, with a tone that's all too smooth, that perhaps you should make an offering at the temple of Taurit, goddess of childbirth. As a gesture, he says, to ensure peace within the royal house. You understand what he means. Do something, anything. Look powerful again, or else so, you agree. You prepare a generous gift, a carved ivory hippo, swaddled in linen and soaked in cedar oil. You dress in ceremonial blue and gold, hair twisted into 7 sacred knots. You walk barefoot through the temple gate, stepping over lotus petals and sheep bones, and the whole time you feel their eyes. Not the gods, the other. Women, watching to see if your shadow shrinks. After the ritual, you return to your chamber and find a note slipped under your pillow. No name, just 5 words in shaky ink. She takes herbs to sleep. You don't need a name. You know exactly who it's about. The concubine. For a moment, you're not sure what to feel. Pity, disgust, hope, then you remember yourself. You burn the note in the oil lamp and brush the ashes into a small jar, just in case. In this palace, nothing truly disappears. That night, you dream of crocodiles. Hundreds of them, crawling through your bedchamber, dragging gold necklaces in their teeth. One of them speaks in your mother's voice. You wake up with your heart pounding and your linen sheets tangled around your legs like seaweed. Your ladies in say you've been mumbling in your sleep. Something about blood, one of them murmurs. You wave her off. The next morning, you learn that the pregnant concubine fainted during her bath. She survives, the child does too, but something shifts. The Pharaoh begins visiting her every day now, not just weekly. He sends food to her chamber, personally fresh honeycomb, quail eggs, tiny wild grapes from the palace garden. He's not just watching over a pregnancy. He's invested. You are, once again, a symbol. She is the story, so you shift tactics. You begin praying not to conceive, not anymore but to outlast. The Nile floods, and it recedes. Temples rise and crumble. Kings are buried and new ones crowned. You will remain. You ask your steward to bring you scrolls histories of previous queens, records of old rites. He blinks, confused, but obeys. You spend your afternoons reading on a cushioned bench, tracing hieroglyphs with your finger. You find one mention of a queen who ruled as regent after her husband's death. Briefly, brutally, she vanished from official record after a few years. But still, she made it into the scrolls. You copy her name onto a scrap of linen and tuck it beneath your sash, a reminder. Your time may not be now, but it is not over. One of your oldest handmaidens, a quiet woman with eyes like sun-bleached stone, kneels beside you one evening and says, without looking up, they forget. You are the only one with legal fire in your name. It sounds like nothing, but it isn't, because it's true. Only the great wife can inherit a temple estate. Only she can speak in legal contracts. Only she can order a priest demoted. Quiet powers, yes, but still, power. You smile. For once, it doesn't hurt. Asterisk, it starts with a fan. A large one-palm fronds woven with gold thread, shaped like a rising sun, a ceremonial item, not for comfort. And yet it's placed deliberately in your chamber this morning, just beside the door, as though someone wants you to notice. You do. Its design is specifically associated with Mat, the goddess of cosmic balance, truth, order, justice, a message. But from whom? Your steward says it was a gift from the high priest of Karnak. To honor your recent offering to Toret, he explains. But you've lived in this palace long enough to know that no gesture is just a gesture. It's a signal, a test balloon, maybe even a proposal. The priests are choosing sides that evening. The concubine, whose pregnant, her agoness seen weeping in the courtyard, publicly, a servant claims. The Pharaoh scolded her for interfering in a festival rite. Something minor, a seating error. But the damage is done. The other women notice, and suddenly she's not untouchable anymore. You don't gloat, you don't whisper. You simply attend prayers as usual. But your lotus-scented silence carries more weight than any accusation. A few days later, a courier delivers an invitation from the temple of Isis. It's formal, written in black ink with deliberate spacing. They ask you to perform the ritual of opening the mouth during a royal funeral. Next month, it's a sacred rite, usually reserved for those with direct ties to divine lineage. It's not a favor, it's a throne-backed handshake. You are being lifted again. Historians still argue whether queens in ancient Egypt held real religious sway or were used merely as ceremonial figures. Some point to depictions of queens offering to gods, standing beside pharaohs in divine temples. Others suggest these moments were performative pageantry, not priesthood. But when you step into the temple of Isis with your sash pinned by the golden eye of Horus, there's nothing performative about it. You feel power in your spine, and this time, when you kneel at the altar, the chants resonate in your bones, not because you believe more, but because they do. You know how it looks, the dignified, sorrowful queen preserving royal ritual through personal loss. You know the eyes of the palace are upon you, that even the Pharaoh himself will hear of how still your hands were during the rites, how sure your voice, and when, afterward, a priest tells you, you carried the gods well today, you don't reply. You just lower your eyes in practiced humility, but inside, something sharp unfurls. Not victory, not yet, but leverage. Back in the harem, the energy shifts. Subtle things, a seat repositioned closer to the inner garden, a servant offering you rose water before anyone else, one of the foreign princesses asking for your advice on a temple prayer. These are gestures, yes, but gestures are everything here. You still haven't conceived, and yet, you're rising. The concubine, meanwhile, has retreated into silence. She walks the halls less. Her ankles swell in the heat. Her laughter is gone, and the Pharaoh, he's become more distant with her, not cold, just distracted. He's thinking now of the future, of lineage, of legacy, and perhaps just perhaps of the woman who stood before the gods and didn't flinch. You don't push, you don't need to. You know enough to let the river bring things to you now, but you do begin preparing. You order your handmaidens to stitch new linens deep blue and copper with falcons embroidered on the sleeves. You request scrolls from the royal library about royal estates in the north. You start practicing your signature with firmer strokes, and most subtly, begin meeting with your steward after dusk. Quiet conversations about temple donations, grain shipments, which priest will replace the one who fell in the BATH-HOUSE. No one stops you, because now, even without a child, you are being listened to. You find that terrifying and thrilling. That night, Nefru curls at your feet. You stroke her head absent-mindedly. As you stare at the ceiling, watching shadows flicker in time with the oil lamp, you whisper, balance always tips. And for the first time in weeks, sleep comes easily. Because deep down, you know this. Power may begin with fertility, but it survives through timing, perception, and silence well played. And those are your new specialties. You wake to laughter, not your own, not anyone from your chamber. It's coming from the garden courtyard, bright, tinkling sound that cuts sharply against the usual morning hush. Curious, you drift to the window and pull back the sheer linen curtain. There, among the blooming lotus and trimmed sycamore, sits a new woman. She's young, too young, barely out of girlhood, with cheekbones like sugar cane and bracelets stacked halfway up her arms. Her dress is dyed deep, purple a color, rare and expensive, usually reserved for state occasions, and yet she lounges on a carved bench as if she were born to it. Your stomach sinks. A new concubine. They don't announce them anymore. No ceremony, no introduction, just a sudden arrival and a noticeable redistribution of attention. You return to your chamber without watching more, but Nefru has already sensed the shift. She mews once and rubs against your ankle, like she's trying to comfort you or warn you, or maybe both. Later that day, during the midday bath, your steward confirms it. She's from the Delta, he says, avoiding your eyes. The daughter of a merchant, her family gifted rare cedar resin to the house of life, a gesture of loyalty. You know what that means. She bought her way in, and from the sound of it, she's already made herself quite comfortable. You try not to let it rattle you. After all, you've survived a dozen prettier, louder, hungrier women before. But something about this one itches. She reminds you of yourself. When you first arrived, when you still thought that youth alone could win the day. So, you adjust. You start wearing your older robes, again the simpler ones, soft from many washings. You eat in the central courtyard instead of in private. You greet the gardeners. You visit the scribes. You speak with the linen weavers and the ointment mixers and the women who sweep the corridors barefoot at dawn. You become visible, not grand, not divine, human, and it works. The servants smile at you more freely now. One of the cupbearers blushes when you compliment the hibiscus water. A priest you haven't spoken to in months sends a tray of pomegranate seeds, chilled and perfectly split. You haven't changed rank, but you've changed position. Historians still debate whether the great wives of Egypt ever wielded soft power, whether their kindness and presence in palace life truly influenced decisions, or whether such notions are modern romantic projections. Some papyri mention queenly wisdom and beloved of the household. Others reduce these women to wombs on thrones. You know the truth is somewhere between the lines, because this is the first week you receive a letter from the Pharaoh. Not a note, a letter, written in his own hand, carefully inked, with a pressed lotus folded inside. He thanks you for your calm presence during recent ceremonies, says the priests were most pleased, says he was moved by your composure. You read it twice. You don't blush. You file it away with the others in a cedar box beneath your bed. You'll show it to no one. That's not the point. The point is that he remembered. Meanwhile, the new concubine is struggling. You hear it in whispers. Her perfume is too strong. She laughed during prayers. She asked for wine at the wrong time of day. Tiny mistakes, but enough to cause ripples. Worse, she's already trying to form alliances. You're approached by one of her ladies, barely out of girlhood herself. She brings a basket of figs and a smile that's too eager. My mistress says the great wife shines brighter than the stars. She says with a practiced tilt of the head. You smile and do not accept the gift. Later that evening, you send a small jar of honeyed almonds to one of the elder priestesses instead. No message. Just the almonds. They're her favorite. This is how wars are won now. Small kindnesses, smaller refusals. You've stopped dreaming of children, not out of bitterness, just recalibration. You've begun to think in terms of legacy, not lineage, in temples and trusts and memories, not heirs. One evening, you pass the chamber of the pregnant concubine, now very near term. She doesn't see you, but you pause just long enough to hear the midwives whispering, "If it's a girl, he'll be disappointed." You exhale quietly. The wind rustles the hanging curtains. The palace wants a son. The gods, however, remain famously indifferent, and you keep walking. Your ankles are sore. Your hands smell of papyrus ink. Your skin is darker from days spent in the sunlit courtyards. You feel, for once, real. No longer just a title, no longer just a face in limestone carvings. You are becoming. The story, the palace, is quieter these days, not because peace has settled, but because everyone is listening. For movements, for signals, for the soft shuffles of sandals that hint at shifting power. And you've grown good at silence this morning. As your linen robe is folded by your steward, you hear hushed voices from the hallway, not arguing, strategizing. Someone mentions the northern estate, again the one you asked about weeks ago. Only this time, there's a new rumor. The Pharaoh is considering reassignment of its oversight. A small gesture, but an expensive one. It could mean he's weighing you for more than ceremony again. You sip your pomegranate juice slowly. You don't react. Later, you receive a formal request to attend a festival planning committee, not just to walk in it, but to organize it, with temple scribes, with priests, with logistics. That hasn't happened ever. Historians still argue whether great wives had administrative duties or whether those were fabricated later to flatter dynastic legacy. But records show a few managed grain stores, one negotiated with Nubian diplomats, a handful even signed off on pyramid construction plans. Now, they're asking for your opinion on firework placement and ritual, torchbearers. You smile, it's a start. The younger women in the harem watch you with a strange mix of awe and suspicion now. You're no longer a rival. You're an institution, and institutions are harder to remove than people. The pregnant concubine now, a mother rarely leaves her chamber. She's tired. The baby cries often. You send her fennel and honey for sleep. You say nothing else. You've learned that sympathy, when wrapped in silence, can seem like grace or guilt. But the new Delta girl, she's still bold, still trying. She wears heavier perfume now, louder necklaces. She's spoken of in the kitchens as a storm in silk. But storms pass, and stones, buried deep in the earth, remain long after. You spend your evenings in the temple annex now, helping transcribe hymns. One priest tells you, you have a steady hand for sacred things. You murmur, "I've had practice." You don't say how much. The Delta girl makes her move. It's mid-morning. You're in the garden chapel, laying a bundle of acacia leaves beneath the statue of Hathor. When your steward arrives awkward, breathless, "She summoned the vizier," he says. Privately, you blink slowly. The vizier rarely enters the harem unless called by the Pharaoh himself. But the Delta girl is clever. She's learned that the vizier oversees temple land grants, and temple land grants mean patronage, which means influence. You nod once and return to arranging the leaves. You've learned not to race, not to panic. The palace punishes haste. That afternoon, you host a quiet meal in your chamber. You invite two priestesses, one scholar, and a widow who oversees the dye workshop in the outer court. No one powerful on paper, but all of them are Trusted voices, over pomegranate wine and grilled river perch. You ask, how's the north grain? They answer, they vent. They offer gossip in exchange for a listening ear. You don't need titles to lead by nightfall. You learn the visit had mixed results. He listened, he nodded, but no land grants were promised. And your steward hears whispers that the Delta girl cried afterward. You don't celebrate. You write a letter to the Pharaoh, not romantic, not poetic, just a clean, concise scroll of your temple recommendations and a single line about the viziers. Presence in the harem. There was confusion regarding protocol. It may reflect poorly on palace boundaries. You seal it with your ring. By morning, the vizier's carriage is rerouted directly to the scribe's office. The message is clear. Your silence wins again. The Nile floods early this year. Too early, fields are swallowed. Ferrymen reroute. Offerings in the temple triple overnight. Everyone's looking for Omenses, especially the Pharaoh. He's seen in prayer nearly every morning now. Not performative, not formal, desperate. Crops fail, after all. Crops mean famine. Famine means revolt. Revolt means no dynasty. And no dynasty, no throne. You're summoned to the temple on the fourth morning of the floods. You're not told why, only that the Pharaoh wishes to speak without audience. You bathe, oil your arms. Wear only linen, no gold. This isn't a queen's visit. It's something else. He meets you in the vestibule of the Sun Court. Older than you remember, or maybe just tired. You were always the calm one, he says. You don't answer. You only incline your head slightly. He asks what you think the gods want. Not in jest. He really wants to know. And so you speak about patience, about the rhythm of the river, about balance, not the kind on scales, but the kind found in quiet rooms. He listens without interruption. And when you finish, he doesn't smile. But he does press his hand lightly against your wrist. That evening, a new edict is issued. Temple grain stores will be redistributed to the northern estates immediately. Quietly, without panic. No one credits you. But the steward winks when he lays your robe out that night, and you sleep soundly for the first time in weeks. Historians still argue whether queens advised kings in Egypt, whether their voices shaped policy or were simply tolerated. Some say the wives were ornamental. Others believe their counsel steered empires. You're starting to believe the truth was never written down. It was only whispered and remembered by those who mattered. You visit the nursery. It's an impulsive decision. You bring honeyed dates wrapped in cool cloth and a pale stone cat for the infant to chew on. You expect resistance. Concubines guard their babies fiercely, but instead, the mother just looks at you and sighs. Take her if you want, she says. She'll belong to the temple anyway. You sit beside her for the first time in months. She looks older now, worn, not defeated but hollowed. You feed the child a date syrup, drop from your finger, and watch her blink up at the sky. What do you want for her? You ask quietly. The concubine doesn't answer, just turns her face toward the breeze. Later, as you leave, you tuck the small cat toy beside the baby's palm. She grips it weakly. You don't look back. In the courtyard, the Delta girl watches you pass. Her jewelry is simpler now. Her smiles rarer. The storm has quieted. At dinner, you receive a scroll from the scribes. The northern estate reassignment has gone through. Your name is listed as consultant, not owner, not ruler, but present. You nod and thank the servant. You've learned that power, once given a perch, builds its own nest, and now everyone knows where yours is. The end comes with no announcement. One morning, you wake, and the steward is waiting with folded hands. The Pharaoh is ill. No one says what kind of illness, only that he hasn't risen in 3 days. Whispers pass like incense smoke. The physicians bring jars, the priests bring chants. The harem tightens. By sunset, messengers ride out to summon his eldest surviving son. From another woman, you watch the palace shift. New guards at the gate, new advisors circling like herons. Everyone preparing for a future that hasn't yet arrived but could. At any moment, you do not cry. Instead, you visit the temple of Thoth, alone, quietly. You light a lamp and leave a small feather-mat S symbol on the stone, a sign of balance, of surrender, or maybe both. That night, you prepare your chamber for departure. Not exile, not disgrace, just release. You're not queen, not regent, but they will keep you as memory, as matron, as symbol. Historians won't know what you whispered to the child before she slept. They won't record the way you rebraided the hair of a girl who once tried to sabotage your standing. They won't carve your name in the temple wall next to kings, but your name will pass between women, and that will be enough. You lie down without undressing. You listen to the Nile and you wait. You sit by the window in silence. Outside, the sun slides slowly over the palm fronds, drenching the palace walls in gold. It's nearing evening, the hour when shadows lengthen and cool breezes slip through the carved stone lattice. You hold a fig in your hand, just one, perfectly ripe, slightly split. You're not hungry, you're thinking. The child was born this morning, not yours, of course. Hers, the concubine who cried, who plotted, who prayed. A daughter. You heard the news first from the linen woman, then from the steward. Then again when one of the junior priests brought a tray of salted lotus seeds to your quarters. No one says it aloud, but the unspoken chorus is clear. A daughter. Not a threat, not yet. You should feel something. Triumph, perhaps, relief. But instead, you just feel. Still, the palace moves on around you. There are preparations for the naming. There will be a private offering to Hathor. Music, bread, laughter. In other wings of the harem, you won't attend. You've already sent your gift a miniature anklet carved from ivory, small enough for a bird. A gesture of peace, or pity, or simply protocol. Historians still argue whether queens and concubines in Egypt truly competed or whether, in the end, they shared more than anyone outside could understand. Same cages, different silks. You know better. There were no winners, only survivors. You run a hand along the edge of the cedar box beside your bed. Inside are letters, tokens, names of forgotten queens you copied down by moonlight. Small, quiet, anchors against the current of time. One day, a scroll might say your name, or maybe not. But you were here, you endured. You learned the hours when silence speaks louder than prayers. You mastered the art of listening in rooms where your voice was never truly yours. You watched younger faces bloom and fade like reeds in the Nile, and still you remained. You don't need temples, you don't need songs. You're not just the Pharaoh's wife anymore. You are the stillness between tides. You are the breath the palace holds before it speaks. And as the sun dips fully below the edge of the stone horizon, you close your eyes. You made it now. Let the palace grow quiet. The rush of sandals on stone softens into memory. The chants of the priests dissolve like mist over the Nile. Even the murmuring fountains seem to hush, as if they too are leaning in to listen. One last time, you are alone in your chamber, but not lonely. The walls are familiar, the air warm and scented faintly with sandalwood. The oil lamp flickers gently in the corner, its light not harsh, but kind, wrapping you in gold. The linen under your fingers is soft from many washings. The cat purrs at your feet. Somewhere beyond the latticed window, the river still moves, slow and eternal, and so do you. There are no more duties tonight, no titles to wear, no roles to play, only the steady rhythm of your breath, in and out. Let your thoughts drift, uncoiled like ribbons. Let the images soften, the temple doors, the fig trees, the silent looks between women who understood too much and said too little. Let them melt into quiet. You are not a queen now. You are not a wife. You are just a soul at rest, a flicker of calm in the long, sun-baked story of time. And when morning comes light and new and silent, again you'll still be here, ready, but for now, rest. You've earned it. You always did.